Okay, everyone, we're looking like it's right around 5:30. Am I starting a minute too early, or yeah, it's 5:30 on my phone, so I'm happy to get going. So thank you, everyone, for coming. Just a couple of quick things. First off, we are recording it. Just heads up on that. We posted the last one on YouTube and got over 100 views. All the people that are in here and to people on YouTube, hello. Thank you for coming and joining and everything. And I just want to get right into it. Last month, Michael invited Talmadge Magno. We're so grateful. Talmadge Magno, the Director of Civil Defense, and then Talmadge invited David Kurohara from HECO as well to answer questions and to sort of talk about all of the things. We submitted a number of questions to them in advance, so he's got a little bit of a presentation to go through, and then after that we can ask some questions. So, you want to get going?
All right. Good afternoon. It's Matt Sid at Talmadge Magno. I'm the Civil Defense Administrator. Been there about 8 years. So he graciously sent me the questions, and we always are thankful for that. It helps us get prepared. But what I want to do is go through my presentation, because I take this as an opportunity for learning, for the community to learn. Civil defense is not just about wildfires. We're about all hazards. And so wildfire is just another disaster that we face on the island. So if we get an all hazard approach, that's the way we gotta look at everything. And so I'll go through our organization and who we're supported by, and it should be answering the questions along the way. If I fail to miss some points, I'll follow them up, or I'm sure you guys would ask me, such as when the sirens are related. Anyway, so we'll get started. And, nice tight group here. Ask any questions as we go through this. So the history of civil defense actually was civil defense during the early years, 1940s, 1950s. It was part of the national defense under the Defense Act. The roles changed throughout the period up until the early 70s, and then they saw more management to all kinds of disasters. So under the president, different executive orders came out, and then FEMA was officially recognized, and then emergency management evolved. So civil defense changed from, including the name, to emergency management. Hawaii County Civil Defense maintains civil defense just because there is some confusion, because Hawaii State Emergency Management was also about civil defense. And so Hawaii Emergency Management Agency is the state. If we went to that name, people would confuse us. They call us anyway, thinking that they call it Honolulu. But anyway, we maintain the name. I think we're the only ones in the nation. So you can see there, we actually are supported by federal law and state law 127 Alpha, and then HRS 128A, which is Homeland Security, which we are the Homeland Security entity for the county, as well as the other emergency management agencies for their counties. And you see the last bullet, we're basically responsible for coordinating emergency management, preparedness, response, and the early stages of recovery for the citizens and the businesses of Hawaii County. So FEMA, because FEMA is such a big part nationwide for supporting us as an organization, for supporting local governments, state governments, for funding, support during disaster, recovery, that we have to follow their doctrine to qualify. So these are the 5 mission areas. I consider public outreach, something like this, to be part of the protection part. We're reaching out to you to give you us information in hopes that you come up with your own individual plans. So that's part, protection and mitigation. So we kind of try to work on the top half of this mission areas to lessen the amount of response we have to do, to lessen the amount of recovery that we have to do. When they say $1 spent now saves $7 in response to recovery. So I see this as worthwhile. So basically our priorities, and it's the same as HECO's priorities, everybody's priorities, is life and safety, protecting life and safety. Related to wildfire, that's what this is all about. The PSPS is all about life and safety, as well as our all hazard approach. It's life safety, then followed by property preservation. Again, our responsibilities are coordination of the county, state, and our federal partners, the non-government organizations that work with us, such as HECO. We also have the Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization, which we've worked with, I think, for the last 20 years. Big Island Wildfire Coordination Group is a organization that has kind of built off of Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization. You guys all aware of that group, HWMO? They have become very popular ever since August 8th, but they've existed for the last 20 years. And Big Island Wildfire Coordination Group has existed. It's the only Big Island Wildfire Coordination Group that still exists after 20 years. All the other counties let theirs kind of lapse. But
tell more about that. What is their responsibility? Who are they?
So Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization is a nonprofit. They're a group that came together under like Department of Forestry. That group dealing with wildfires to kind of be the advocate between the communities and these organizations responsible for wildfire response and protection. And so they help, what you guys see, they help do the FireWise programs, the community plans, and so forth. And the Big Island Wildfire Coordination Group is the responding agencies, DLNR, National Park Service, County Fire, DOFA, airports, everybody that fights fire, PTA, we're all part of it because we support each other. And like, just to give you a sense, this group has been coordinating for the last 20 years. They are together, I guess. That's the best way to say it. They are coordinating. So, we coordinate government, non-government. We reach out to the community to get their plans together, businesses to get their plans together, and of course, continuity of operations so that if we get hit, we're able to recover that much faster. I mentioned all hazards. These are a few of them. All of these we can have on this island, including blizzards. But this group focuses on wildfire. You gotta look at the vulnerabilities of your community. Waikoloa, you get flooding, you get wildfires. You guys had earthquakes, high winds. Floods. So this is part of our responsibility, Hawaii County Civil Defense. We push out our county alerts on what is now our Everbridge vendor. It's a normal contract, government contract, so it's going to be up for renewal later this year, so it may change, but we like Everbridge, so we're going to try to keep them. This is what we call opt-in alerts. You have to volunteer for them. So you have to sign up, receive email, text, phone call, landline, cell phone, Facebook, X. But unfortunately, you got to sign up for them. We do attach the phone book. Everybody listed on the white pages gets attached to it, so we can increase our number that we push out to 60. Unfortunately, there's less than 20,000 people signed up for Evacuation. But we still keep pushing. The next system is called a push alert. It's the Integrated Public Alert Warning System. It's a national system. That's the one you guys see on the TV, the scroller. That's the phone messages you get, or the phone calls you get monthly. And then, so those are push alerts. Everybody gets them unless you've turned off your Amber Alert on your phone. So that goes out to everybody that's within, cell or TV radio reception. All hazard outdoor warning siren. And you gotta think about all these systems as redundant to support each other. Not just one is sufficient. Although the IPAWS, Integrated Public Alert Warning System, being a push-out system, that's the highest grade warning system that we have in the nation. So that's as good as it would get. But the warning sirens basically just alerts you. You hear the siren, range is maybe half a mile, depending on the conditions. With high wind conditions, if you're downwind of it, it might go further, but if you're upwind of it, it's going to be even less. You're not going to, less likely to hear it if you're indoors, if you got anything running, it's going to, kind of impact the siren sound. So, they're highly clustered around the seashore or the coastline for tsunami, but they're all hazard warning sirens. You guys are going to get to, the update I got today is it'll be sometime this year. Mid-month, the federal siren equipment should be arriving. From that point, the State Department of Accounting and General Services pushes out the notice to proceed to Able Electric, that in 30 days they got to deploy and start working on it. So, I think at one time they said maybe up to September, October, and that seems like that timeline is working out. And their desire is to do both sirens at the same time. So, unfortunately we've heard it before, yeah. I think 4 or 5 years ago. It was going to be this year. But it's seeming like it's more likely that it's going to happen now. All our paperwork's done, push it to the state, and indications are that they're just waiting on the federal signal.
And where are they located?
So one's going to be at Pu'unui Park, and the other one is at the Kamakua Nui Park.
Talmadge, you said the name of the contractor was?
Able Electric. It's easier to put them up in county facilities, on county land. Believe it or not, even though it's on county land, we had some in an area on this island that the neighbors contested it. We dug the hole twice, and they said, not in my backyard. It's interrupting my view plane of Mauna Kea. So at that time, the mayor said, no, don't do it. So that community didn't get a siren.
Do you know the height that they're gonna be, roughly?
No, I don't want to guess. But it'll be, if you've seen the ones on the green poles, it'll be that same height. It's not intrusive or anything. I know at Pu'unui Park, you got trees that tall.
That's what I was thinking about, you got the trees.
Yeah, so you get the baseball field backstop. That's as tall as that. So, but just a warning that I don't know who lives by those parks, but hopefully not.
Who sounds the alarm?
The way the alarms go, State Emergency Management has the capability to sound it. And for the monthly test, we kind of rotate that duty just so that we have the practice. So State Warning Point in Honolulu, they can do it. the police departments, the police dispatches in each county are the county warning points. They're 24 hours, so they get sounded. And then all civil defense and emergency management offices get sounded as well. So three of those groups get sounded.
Will they have independent power backups separated for PSPS? Event goes down, will the sirens go down as well?
PSPS will not affect them because they're solar operated. They have a battery backup, they have a battery bank, and so they're supported that way. They get replaced, the batteries get replaced like every 2 to 4 years. And so, yeah, they're a good system. So PSPS won't interrupt them. They've got a cycle anywhere from 7 to 12, functions that you can run.
Like different sounds or alerts?
Yeah, so you can run it like 7 times, up to 12 maybe, I've heard. You can activate it before the power runs out.
Oh, so it's not like you can send out different warnings. You're not going to say like, this is
It's
a
all the
fire,
same.
it's all the same sound, but you can activate stuff.
Yeah, and so good point. It's like same sound. What it's telling you is go to your device that you get your information. So whether you pick it up on your cell phone, your email, you listen to radio, TV, email, go to those systems that you get your information. In a PSPS situation, we're working with the cell providers to make sure that they have backup for their repeaters. We're working with the radio stations to make sure that they got backup so that their transmissions can be pushed out. And so those will be you go to. If TV's down, the internet's down, it'll be cell phones, and radio stations. That's why in the Ohana booklet to your plans and so forth, that's why the AM/FM radio is key. It's battery operated. You can be listening to your station. And the fallback is everybody's car, as far as I know, still's got a radio, right? So you can go in your car and tune in. So.
Talmadge,
Yes.
if we notice that a siren's not working, who do we call?
So you can call us direct. So every month when we test them, we have contacts that are near each siren. We call, we ask. And so we're gonna have to get that with the 2 sirens that go in here. We're gonna get the community and see. I don't know if you could hear from the clubhouse and stuff like that. We'll test it, but we like to use businesses because they're usually operational. People aren't always home, so it's hit and miss. But yeah, we test the siren first working day of the month. We call this list of people to confirm. If it's not working, state emergency management gets notified, and they'll send crews over to do the repairs. Every once in a while, we have what's called a runaway siren malfunction. Critters get in them, set them off. In that case, we can remotely shut them down, and then we'll send. My people will go out to see if we can repair it, and then if it's more than that, then we'll get the state folks to come and fix it. So, but nevertheless, if you got a concern about it, call civil defense, call state emergency management if you got that number, but we'll kind of start the ball rolling and take care of it.
So when they're installed, will you test them on the install days, or will you wait until the next?
They'll test them. So we'll generally put out messages that these sirens will be tested. Sometimes you get annoyed, but we'll test them.
You have battery backups just when somebody comes out and there's a bug in where you have to replace it. The guys that want to hot swap, you have spare batteries. I know you say they have a long life, but so if they end up not being able to fix it, they can just put a new one in. You're not the only one.
Well,
we don't have any downtime.
Yeah, so unfortunately, no. We gotta wait for the text to come in. And so, if a siren's down, we'll put out a message to the community that you're not gonna hear a siren.
Using as a backup battery, that might swap. Just a thought.
Are the texts coming from our island, or are they gonna be flown in?
Honolulu. Yeah, so the sirens, yeah, it's just a way to get noticed, to look for your messages. And the last thing I wanted to point out is that the radio system will still be a valid way to get messages if you have that battery operated radio or in your car. And that's part of our civil defense Everbridge message as well, plus what the integrated public alert warning system will push out. So just some products that we have pushed out for Wildfire. And if you guys are familiar with HWMO and their products, they have that system that's more recognized nationally, especially in California, Ready, Set, Go. This kind of conforms with that and the colors, and it gives you insight as to what's happening. So green, basically notification that something's occurring, but there's no threats. You know, yellow, there is a fire, you need to stay informed. Orange, wildfire advisory. You might want to think about evacuating, getting ready, evacuate early. Wildfire warning, you need to evacuate now. So those are our tiers. Anytime we put out a message, it'll have these at the bottom of the message. You see our messages, because all of these conform with other things that the National Weather Service puts out, Hawaii Volcano Observatory. We all have levels and color codes and so forth. So we try to make everything coordinate with each other so that it's uniform and less confusing. But this is specifically for wildfire. And you can see at the link below is for HWMO. And let's see, PSPS, if you guys haven't gone to it yet, HECO has a good webpage, all information for public safety, power shutdown. I just brought the Hawaii County, Hawaii Island zones that have been indicated for that program. They also have a product that you can enter your information to see if your residence, your business is in those areas, so you can make plans accordingly. Of course, you can see that Waikoloa is in that area, as well as areas in North and South Kurohara, all the way up to PTA. This is not, this is what they put out for this period, this season. This could change based on more research, changes in what HECO does as far as their infrastructure as they move to strengthen their infrastructure. So a lot is going on, it's dynamic. So the county, HECO, all our partners have been meeting ever since this came about, 6 months ago. We've been in discussion. And I know a lot of the questions were about it. And so like water is part of the discussion. Water is part of our emergency operations, groups that are in there. Any discussion with water needs or threat to their infrastructure, threat to water provisions for the community, we're always talking. So there is a possibility that if PSPS happens, that some communities will get, impacted by water. But if it's to fight fire, we work together with fire department to make sure, or with water, fire department to make sure that they are having adequate supplies to be able to fight fire. But on the planning side, you got to be prepared if water shuts down for that period. What are you gonna do?
Are the fire hydrants on the same line as the homes? I mean, if we don't get water to our house, does it not go to the fire hydrant?
I'm not sure, well, in other areas, yeah, it's all tied in. So you guys have a private water company, so.
So the fire hydrants wouldn't have water?
If they can't pump, you won't have water.
It depends.
Yeah.
Depends. In certain areas, you might be jumping.
Yeah, but
So in certain areas, Department of Water Supply would be the predominant water provider, and in certain areas around the island, there's private water companies. So we've been working with Department of Water Supply and some of the private water companies to make sure that we have proper communication. You know, if and when PSPS is engaged, and there will be some notice before that, so they can get ready or prepared. And PSPS, you see, like orange area. This is part of the electrical circuits that will be affected, that may be affected. Not all of them will be affected at the same time. This area is part of a broader study that identified the highest risk of wildfire impact to our consultants and National Weather Service and other data that they collect. And so some of the circuits may be affected and some won't.
What about here?
Yeah, so very specifically, this came up yesterday. I just by happenstance happened to have a meeting with Chief Todd yesterday morning where I asked this, and then the mayor happened to have a campaign event here yesterday afternoon where it came up again. And after the meeting, Roger came up to me and told me that the north well does have battery backup and generator backup, but the south well does not, and that none of the county wells do, but that is the situation with the two private wells. I don't have any personal verification of it. I'm just repeating what I heard come through my brain, and that's what was registered. But we definitely need to follow up and figure out exactly what hydrants are and are not. This is a very high priority of mine for.
Well, what's HECO's understanding? You know, what you learned just one thing. What do you understand the relationship between your power supply and water here in the village with our private water supplier?
I don't know if there's specific plans, but I know they have backup generation. And they have backup generators in different parts, running pumps or backing up pumps in different areas. I'm not sure what this area specifically is. So I cannot answer for them.
Both Michael and Roger also told me yesterday that the Hawaii Water Supply is having a tabletop exercise next week. Is that correct? And that they sometimes allow observers. We're going to try and get me in the room to ask these questions of the people who actually man the pumps. So hopefully we should find out in a week or so.
Now, through all of that, you mentioned private owners with the wells.
Private
Private.
water companies.
Yes.
Do you know which ones supply what part of the village in case everything goes to crap, that they take over, and then will they lose power?
Not to that level of granularity. I don't know that operation.
Rural Hawaii water, rural, private, under the one, you're in Waikoloa.
Okay.
And they confirm they have backup generation at all the facilities that could last several days. They do weekly generator tests, and they top off the tanks on a weekly basis.
Would they give preference to the hydrants versus the homes?
It's water, and so there's,
Yes,
you
there's
can't
no way
turn it
to,
on.
okay.
But they want to keep water running at all times.
So we could assume if we lost the water in the house, that the fire hydrant put in the house wouldn't have water.
Correct.
So is it your understanding, Michael, that they have the generator backup at one well?
No, they said at every facility that impacts Waikoloa Village,
Septic.
their facilities. And
Yeah,
they said they can't get too granular due to security concern, so they can't say exactly what's where.
Okay,
So I
so
did ask.
that's fair. Let's follow up on these details after it's clear that we don't have the specifics.
But they were thinking about that even before they unveiled the PSPS, because it was obvious that something was gonna come to Hawaii, since this is impacting the West Coast. And Hawaii Water is owned by a West Coast company, and so they're very familiar with this kind of issue.
Is HECO gonna update their website by community, knowing all these nuances? Like, are you gonna be more detailed of what the residents in that community should be aware of? Or, because everyone's gonna go to the site to understand about the program.
Right. So in addition to our public messaging, our ads that you might have seen in the paper, you know, the bell curve that we ran ads on, so it's 24 to 48 hour notice, and then we're in it, and then after the winds die down, the conditions improve, our guys have to do our spotting. All of that messaging has been done via email, and also, I believe on social media, and multiple social media platforms. So, since we do have, there's nothing I wanted to ask or say, is that there is also a medical form. It's electronic now and it's on our website. They're trying to get it into a PDF so people can actually hand it to folks that may have somebody at home that has medical conditions or medical needs, so that visibility is with us, and that we also can share that information if they allow us to, and there's a box to check for that with first responders. And sometimes if there's a prolonged, because I've been with WSU many events, and prolonged outages is not new. We've gone like 3 weeks, I think, in Nanavali without power. That was catastrophic, by the way, Gazelle. But this may be several days at the worst. So several hours, 2 to 6 hours, to maybe a couple of days. So the length of the duration of the outage is going to impact those on medical needs. So what are their options? And we're asking them to prepare either some kind of backup generator or spare oxygen tanks, others, or even just go to a place where we got power, like a relative's house, or worst case, certain medical facilities might have backup power. But all of that is on our website, and again, we've been pushing this out, via social media. So.
David, could you get a QR code out or something for people to sign up to get their medical forms filled out and make it easier for people?
Yes.
A lot of people go to the website.
Yeah, I will email it to.
Sure, we'll send it out.
And you send it up.
Absolutely.
I would hope that the backup generators for the pumps get tested on a periodic timetable. Because if not the times, you're going to turn it on and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, they said weekly.
They test it weekly.
And they top off their tanks weekly.
Mm-hmm.
Not to make light of the situation, because it just take one episode to kind of impact folks, but there's several conditions that have to come into alignment for this to happen. Just to make sure you guys understand, right? It's got to be a wind event. It's windy out here most of the time, but 45 miles per hour or higher to begin with, and then you need low relative humidities, and then a high fire danger situation, because fuel levels, fine fuels are more conducive to igniting, and so all that has to line up for this condition to come into play. With that, there's still another layer. There are spotters out there, confirmed conditions and so forth. Because we don't want to just frivolously, shut down power and do stuff unnecessarily. So, just kind of making sure that all the boxes are checked before we get to that point. And along, while folks are doing that, working with the National Weather Service, working with the fire protection folks to make sure fuels are at that level. All those discussions are gonna be being made. Public notice will be pushed out at that time as well as to, what we're considering, what needs to be your stance as far as preparations and so forth. So it's going to be.
Yeah, we'll be working with National Weather Service, Civil Defense, so the criteria, the levels of impact that we have to reach is, got to be red flag warning. So fire weather watch, red flag warning. So we'll work with them to find out what the conditions are, and then 45 and higher gusts. And then
Gusts or sustain?
gusts, 45 to 50 mile per hour gusts. National Weather Service starts at 20 or 25 miles an hour to get us into the red flag warning. The other thing that maybe Tommy's going to be alluding to is we will be, and we are already installing our own weather stations, and also the next step will be AI cameras. So I think there's one that already went in above the shopping center on one of our transmission poles. So these weather stations will also be part of the notifications that we get to prompt us into whether we're in these type of conditions or not. And this is the first time that we're doing it. We have to do something. Okay. So we launched it on July 1st. We're working with our consultants to come up with criteria in order to trigger the possibility of a PSPS enablement. Not all circuits may be affected. So when you look at this orange area, not every circuit in this, not this entire orange area will be affected. It's really granular. It'll be looking at conditions more site specific. And then like Tommy said, the spotters will be also another way to tell whether there's like super high winds that could impact the lines. In addition to that, we're hardening our grid. We're changing a lot of the hardware, looking at pole protection, looking at different types of conductors. So there's a lot going on to make the grid, what do you say, not fire resistant, but just hardening the grid so it's less susceptible to highway impacts. Like there was a whole bunch of work that was done in South Point, Waikoloa area, all there around the south area to inspect and replace, cross arms, rusty bolts, guy wires, things like that. So, and cut back trees. Trees is another big thing down there in the south area. You guys don't have much of a tree problem here yet. So, most of Waikoloa Village is underground. Most of it is already. And so that's that much more protection. And also I think there's our transmission line that goes above kind of where the stables are, above the town, where we have the weather stations mounted. So we'll be able to see relatively easily what the conditions are real time.
So on the weather stations, where are those located? Stables, you said?
I think it's above. As we drove down one day, I think it was earlier this week, we actually saw it on one of the poles. It's a big whitish silverish.
Is that something that the community can access to look at the wind speeds?
That is something our company is working with right now. I think first responders are already, and getting them access to the camera, and it's got to be secured access and all of that. So I think that's part of the plan, is to get more people to be able to look at it and to see what the conditions are. I don't think it'll be like 100% public though. Like somewhat like the hotel cameras and stuff are.
Speaking, you said they have spotters out there. The prevailing winds come from like the upper road going to Waimea. And so I guess a lot of that is private land. So will they have something out there because all that grass will dry out?
Yeah.
And if a spark or something happens, it'll push it down to the village, you know, and so is somebody, how do they check the humidity levels out there? Because it could be really low, 2 or 3% or 4% out there and be high somewhere else.
Yeah, mostly our spot will be looking at our lines. So if our transmission lines are in the area, regardless of there's, you know, lots of dry fuel upstream or upwind from the power lines, our main concern really is to look at and mitigate any type of electrical line ignition, right? So if the lines are impacted, for example, if a cross-arm breaks or there's something going on and our spotters using binoculars who are constantly like driving and looking up and down these lines can find something, then it'll keep the community safe. It's all about public safety.
So it's nothing on those private lands out there, if something get going and the winds pick it up and push it down toward the village.
Are you talking about spotters just in the field?
Yeah. You know, like when I drive to Waimea.
I believe our cameras have a pretty thin.
Parkerland, that's how the 2021 fire started.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a bump road.
Sure, but
But
it's
you
Parker.
and HFT will have access to the new sensors going up, or are they up?
So, well, they're not up yet, but Alert West have their cameras out. And, you know, as they come online, we'll have access to data.
Well, the highest risk then would be the power line close to the village, which is not
Right.
those stables. And if that sparked, it could spark a fire really close to our community. So is there any thought of undergrounding that transmission line?
Yeah, we've had requests to underground that transmission line. It's just, you know, transmission lines and I guess the costs and the terrain in which it travels on is sort of a concern. Now, there's areas on the island that have good places to underground. The majority of it is in wet areas. And the drier areas have, you know, lots of very little topsoil and a lot of rock.
Yeah,
So working with
vegetation.
That's a bit right. So one thing is to control the vegetation too. So that's another option that you know, I guess communities are looking at is to really like either cut fire breaks, look at the vegetation as part of the tetrahedron triangle for starting fires.
Well, what is
But you know, like the, for example,
responsibility to control the vegetation in your right of way?
majority of our easement stipulate the vegetation management is trees and the impact of trees to our lines. The easements are sometimes 12.5 feet on each side or even more narrow. So there's not a whole lot of space. So for example, what was done on the Hamakoa coast was we worked with commitment schools. So they had leased their lands out to eucalyptus, this company that were growing eucalyptus trees. And the bark for the eucalyptus trees kept peeling off with the wind, falling on the line, it would bark. And it would either cause an outage or an incipient fire or both. So we brought that to their attention. They cut back way more than 50 feet because those trees grow about, right now they're about 150 feet. So this example is kind of more extreme, but that tree, those trees right next to our 90-foot transmission poles was a huge threat. So that's why we addressed that right away. So I think they cut miles of it. But as far as like around here, because again, majority of the lines are on the ground. So if you drive to the neighborhoods, I think there's only like a pole every so many hundreds of feet, and maybe you got street lights. So your street lights are energized too, but most of the wires are running underground in conduit.
But we're talking about your transmission line, that right away. You're saying you have no obligation to control.
No, it's not
vegetation
that we have
in that
no
right of way?
obligation, we're looking at it, we had requests in with the company to bury those transmission lines. We do have requests.
There is one option, and controlling the vegetation is another. Vegetation you can do easily next week,
Yeah, sorry.
before fire season. Are you planning to do that?
Not necessarily, not vegetation management, where we clear grass,
Yes.
I don't think that's part of the, plan.
Why not?
Because it's not part of our easement obligations. Yeah, it's mostly trees and tree vegetation. But grass,
But if the line breaks, it's gonna fall to the ground, and whatever is there that's burnable is gonna burn.
that's why we have.
Doesn't matter if it's a tree or not.
Yeah, that's why we're hardening our grid, and we also have, this other feature called fast trip. So we have quite a few circuits now that is also part of this PSPS plan that is on fast trip. Fast trip was implemented somewhere around February, and although, many don't.
That's to cut the power after the line breaks.
No, it's actually, it dissipates the energy in the lines as the circuit breaker trips. So even if the line is impacted to where a tree hits it, it'll cut it really quickly. Or even if it comes to the ground, the energy will be dissipated. And this fast trip mechanism, I think we have quite a few circuits, maybe 27, 30 circuits.
So instead of the line being there bouncing around, starting fires, it'll be shut off.
It'll be shut off.
Yeah, but the fire might start when it first hits the ground. You got a lot of power in the line when it first breaks. And when it hits the ground, that's when it's gonna spark.
Well, fast trip minimizes that impact. So before, because of August 8th and the impacts of the tragic day, the company has taken quite a few steps. The first thing we did was to implement, spotters, before PSPS came along. So spotters, fast trip, and the impact of that was prolonged outages. So many of the customers that are on fast trip circuits, our line crew has to inspect the lines before we energize that line again. Because typically, in the olden days, the fuses used to blow out. Yeah, maybe there might have been some ignitable energy as the line hits the ground, but the fuses would blow. And you could drive up and down. See, we have a hardened grid, but we don't have a smart grid yet. So our inspectors, our line guys, we drive up and down and we look for the cutouts. And that's how we can isolate, we can make the repairs while energizing the rest of the customers outside those cutout fuses. So if we have an impact on our line, and there's 2,000 customers on that line, the fuses would blow, the cutouts would open, right? There may be some physical damage to it, which our line doesn't have to repair, but we could energize the rest of the circuit by just isolating the one section that is damaged. But now with fast trip, it cuts at the circuit breaker, so the fuses are not visibly open. You cannot tell where the impact is, so the visual inspection is needed. So then we can give the all clear back to dispatch so they can energize the line. It's another safety measure. We don't want to just start it without inspecting. And the inspection takes longer. And this started in January, so that's why some of you have, who have been impacted by outages, it's taking longer. So we've been getting a lot more complaints and trying to explain to them what changes have been made to keep the community safe from wildfire risk. So we're looking at the undergrounding of that transmission line. It's just that it's going to be super expensive because the rock is so dense.
So
not to belabor the point, but the easement for the electric company is the trees that would hit the line about 20-ish feet, 25 feet on either side of it. The rest,
It's less.
less than that, 12 feet on each side.
10, 12, yeah. It's a
Tight
narrow
and
strip
narrow,
of land.
narrow strip of land, but it does not cover the ground underneath it. Any vegetation management in that case would go to the original landowners who have granted the easement out, which in this case is very likely the WVA. Is that an accurate assessment right there?
I don't know specifically who owns it.
Okay, but it's the landowners underneath it, it's
Yeah.
who has granted the easement. Is that your
Yeah,
understanding?
and every easement is different. I mean, there might be some that are the same, but it doesn't always correlate.
Yeah, all right, cool.
So we're about 5
Yes,
minutes.
yeah, we're good going.
Over the allotted
Sorry.
time. Maybe if there's one more question, but I think that after that, we wanna move on to our regular meeting. Talmadge, I don't mean to cut off your presentation, but if you guys are hanging around, if anyone had questions, we can ask them after, or we have their emails, and so if anyone wants to send us some follow-ups, we can share them. But do you wanna?
Yes, right, yes, you need to.
Last words, wrap it up for us. It's been very informative.
So, yeah, good discussion. Just note that, it's not like one solution is gonna fix everything. So, like with this discussion about the overhead power lines, you got that for that. David talked about minimizing the impacts of the lines, but a good example of what went on here that the Department of Transportation Highways helped with, and the local CERT, Firewise, and Team Rubicon, you gotta make fuel breaks. That's another thing that you put in. So it's gotta be all these different preventive measures, defensible spaces, do what you can do, have your personal plans, all that's gotta come together to get a better situation for us. So, and I'll stick around after.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. That is the best transition I've ever seen in my entire life, because literally the first agenda item right here are fuel break updates. I'm not even kidding, that was awesome. So yeah, like Talmadge was saying, you all have a little map in here. We have a couple of fuel breaks that have been cut, Mauka of the village. I drove both of them. Michael came to join on one of the drives on the Poo side of the lower new break right here. But just to describe it to everybody in the room and sort of understand what's going on, the furthest Mauka one is about 3/4 of a mile Mauka of the solar farm that you go up there. It is on the Kohala side. You can see it pretty clearly. These were cut by the state, by the way, just back up, back in March, April timeframe. It is just Mauka of the solar farms. You can see it off to the left side if you're going up the hill. There's a gate there. It's quite wide. It's 40 feet wide. It's quite clear. The WVA did apply a pre-emergent on after the state cut it. And when I drove it, the erosion was real low. There really wasn't any growth on it. That whole drive is on YouTube. I posted a video of it. It's like 35 minutes long. So go check it out. It's very pretty. I talked for only a minute or two at the start, and then you can leave it on the background as a screensaver or whatever. That one's cool. I'm really thrilled about that one. The other new break is an existing road. It's the water utility easement road. When you're driving up, it's just below, it's just Mackay of the solar farm. And it's those two big yellow gates that are after the big twisty back on both the Kohala side and the Poo side. The Poo side actually isn't the yellow gate. It's the one where people used to walk their dogs all the time. Both of those, they basically, because there's already a road that is extinct right there. There was about a 20-foot regular road, but at some points it's paved, at some points it's gravel, it's quite windy. The state has doubled that, basically. They came and they went parallel alongside of it on both sides. This one, the WVA did not apply pre-emergent to, and as Michael can presumably attest to, it is growing back pretty fast. It's already got a lot of growth on there, and this brings me to my next point, the maintenance responsibility. After the DOT cut these fuel breaks, they did not retain them within their inventory. There's also a new one that is just being cut right now up on Parker land that was announced yesterday. Also not going to be in the DOT's inventory, so they are not responsible for maintaining it. It is up to the individual landowners to maintain these new breaks that were gifted to us. And I don't need to get into the whole thing right now, but that is a thing that we should discuss at some point, how to make sure that we get these kept and maintained rather than going back into a fallow state and being refilled with fuel.
Why did WVA not tackle the second one?
Sure, so the number one reason is this map you can see, there are TMKs here, it crosses multiple landowners, is the easiest answer. Because it goes across Babcock Land Corporation, it goes across Waikoloa Green LLC, and it got cut off a little bit at the bottom, but there's the solar farm, the owners of that is Waikoloa Land Company, or Waikoloa, whatever, doesn't matter. Another owner, another private owner owns where it went across, and I assume that they did not want to take the liability or the responsibility for other people's property.
Do they
but-
even engage? Do they ask? Do you know, Michael, if the WBA even engage with these landowners?
I don't know.
Okay.
So this is a thing that we need to push a little bit and discuss about how we
It's
should-
unfortunate we got a lot of rain right after the new fuel breaks were cut. So the grass is growing back faster than anyone wanted.
But the most important one is this one, because the prevailing winds would make that area a much lesser threat for the village,
Yeah, and I don't
especially
wanna,
with the WVA's rate.
I don't wanna speak for Shelley, I know she's not here, but we had a meeting with her, and I know that she would love to see, and she's in, conversations with the fire department, gravel laid over some of those cubics, because fire does not like gravel. Massive cost, so we'll see where her conversations about that go.
I did film the lower one, the New Break one, and drove that, and that one is pretty rough in a few spots. There's quite a bit of erosion, and that is the number one justification that we have gotten back from Roger, is that they are concerned about the new cut dirt washing away and then just being exposed rock, and that being both impassable and being a breeding ground for future grass. So if they could just gravel that and hold that down. A suggestion that has been floated a little bit is there's these giant piles of asphalt that Goodfellow Brothers has across from the solar farms. Right now, they're responsible for shipping all that back off, I assume, to a landfill because it's just trash. What if they, instead of wasting all that gas in that landfill space, they went and laid it out on the breaks? I know for a fact Shelley told me this afternoon that she had proposed that to everyone. I don't know what the status of that is either. So that is something that we could definitely follow up on, and that could be a win-win-win all the way around on that.
The open question with that is that asphalt runoff stuff, is it flammable?
Yeah, so, but
That would defeat the purpose, so that's an open question.
a long-term planning of how to maintain these fuel breaks is important for us right now because fire season is upon us, and it's something that we need to address. Yeah. You have anything to add to it, or is this a good summary?
This is not my thing.
Questions?
Any questions, anything about it?
The landowners, where the fuel breaks go through private land, are they required to maintain it?
No. Okay, so the only thing that would require maintenance of any land this is a bigger conversation a little bit. People will probably seen HB 1842 in the news a little bit lately. That's the more stiff penalties for landowners and stiffer penalties for arson on red flag days. It has been in the news for the past week or so in Hawaii. That only applies to violations of the fire code. The fire code, as I've done a lot of research very recently, is all based off of national fire standards. There are about 30 chapters in it. Almost all of them, 29 of the 30, are dedicated to structures. Cities preventing large work. One chapter, chapter 17, is the only thing that talks about wildlands and open lots and fuel breaks and things of that nature. That only gets invoked once a jurisdiction has been declared a wildland-urban interface. The people that do that are the county or the state, or I don't know, James might have more information on it. Do you know more about this than I do today?
Julia's got it.
Julia's got
I've been
it.
asking for years for the county to do it.
So, but the
Federal thing.
The issue is the second that happens, then the large landowners are on the hook to start following code, and there's a couple of large landowners who would not want that to happen. And so it hasn't happened yet, and so there is literally no responsibility. And I mean, I don't want to be sitting here tossing out accusations or anything, but you see this stops right here, the second fuel break right there. It stops at the border with Parker Ranch land. The reason that happened is Parker Ranch did not give permission to go into their property. I now have learned that this property is just absolutely riddled with like way higher concentration of UXO than everywhere else, and it's like totally dangerous. And it makes sense why they denied the permission. But the point remains, the private landowners are king in their land, and there's only so much we can do. And it's a very difficult, tricky.
For those of you who don't know, UXO, it's unexplored ordinance left over.
How is it that the goats run it?
They probably are. How do you know that?
I don't know who's in the area.
Okay, any questions about the fuel breaks and where we're standing, or should we move on to the next thing? Yes, sir.
They don't have any type of programs for, I forgot my train of thought, control burns.
Talmadge, do we have any control burns on the island anywhere? Is that a thing that happens? I don't know about that.
You know, does the fire department, do they have any dozers? And then once a year, maybe in April or May, they go out and cut a fire break. And I can understand what you said, you can't go on private land, but do they have a program, you know, with the Army, the military coming through all the time, tearing up the road, or using the road, I should say. And do they have dozers like Cat 5s or D6s that could come and help cut a double wide dozer break to help slow it down? Because once it gets going, coming from that highway up there, it's moving fast with them down with them winds. And by the time it hit the power lines here, I can see the power lines right there, and they happen to burn the wire, whatever, the tree or whatever like that. You know, hopefully you have evacuation, you know, like it was the last time when we had to evacuate. But I was just wondering, how come they don't have controlled burns with the military participating in it if the fire department is not big enough?
That's a question for them. But, you know, they'll use active burnouts during active firefighting to remove fuel, but, you know, that's what we call them prescribed burns.
Yeah, prescribed burns.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like this problem with these new fire breaks. We got them cut in April, and they were cleared, and now it's going back, the vegetation stayed back. So once the vegetation fills in, whether it's from a bulldozer or a prescribed burn, doesn't matter which one it is, it clears the vegetation in the first place. Once it grows back, that's the problem. So we've got to have some kind of system in place where we consistently, every few months, go back and spray those areas so that the vegetation does not regrow. That's the key.
So they don't have a program like that with dozers that can come and scrape it again to get it down in the middle of the soil.
Well, once you've scraped it and you've got it level, you can get a spray truck in there much easier. Cheaper, much cheaper. So that, HDOT did that. So that's a plus. You know, that wasn't in their budget, they just did it voluntarily. And now it's out.
I don't know if they had the necessary collaboration with the community like WBA say, we did this work for you, now you need to go in and kind of maintain it after the fact. I don't know if that conversation ever happened. But they kind of put it on a plate, and I don't know if they said, here you go, it's yours now.
Effectively, that's my understanding.
Well, it's a conversation that Matt is trying to get going now. How do we keep these going?
I mean, it's a bigger problem that there is no long-term plan, and the WBA has all this land, fuel breaks going through their land, and no preventative measures to manage the fuel breaks.
And no bullets.
Well, and no money, right? Like, there's a lot of money.
If anyone here is in the WBA, we send a lot of things for the agenda, but if someone else wants to send something, agenda item, plan for maintaining fuel breaks, question mark. We can hopefully talk about it at the July meeting and see, we have a board member here, but I don't want to put you on the spot too much, Michael.
That's what his job is. That's why he wants that.
Well, and he's here.
There you go.
I mean, if he didn't care, he wouldn't be here.
That's true. Okay, if there are no questions about fuel breaks, right now let's move on to the MOA Confidentiality Clause regarding the new second road. That's for Matt and David.
So, you can say anything, I'll start. You can see there's a pretty detailed breakdown in the status update, so I don't want to speak over that. But short summary is the three landowners, Waikoloa Heights Land Company, William Morgan, and the WBA are entering into an agreement or negotiating an agreement actively for reasons. We don't know what's in it because there's a confidentiality clause. We know it exists because it showed up on the agenda for last month's board of directors meeting and then got whisked away to executive session. I think everyone in this room knows how I feel about confidentiality and the whole thing. We are very proactively engaging the board on this issue, and we're very proactively engaging with our county representatives. This came up quite a bit last night with the mayor, if anyone was there, and we are reaching out to our state representatives as well. And for anyone who hasn't heard this sort of whole situation, just strategically, we had a conversation with David Tarnas last Friday, to our representative here for the area in the State House, to see what his advice would be for the approach and where we could bring the state angle in on this whole thing. And short summary, the road that's being constructed is going across these three landowners' spaces. It's going from the Queen K up to the wastewater treatment plant, and then in between the wastewater treatment plant and the village is going to be where the low-income housing is going to be, and presumably those surface streets are what's going to connect it. The tie-in for the road is going to happen on the Queen K, the lower end, and that is going to happen through state funds, since it is a state highway project. Those funds have not been committed yet to the project. They're going to have to go through the budget next cycle. David Tarnas is going to have to be the one, and presumably Senator Richards are going to be the ones submitting this to the State House for funding and talking to their colleagues. And the colleagues are going to ask, hey, what's the status of the road? Is it being built? Where is it at? I want to see plans. I want to see environmental assessments. I want to see everything. I want to, because the state's not going to commit money to a project that hasn't started. If they don't believe it's not going to start for another year, the state's going to sit on the funds for a year, right? If they don't think it's going to sit there for 2 years, they're going to sit on the funds for 2 years. So, saying this to YouTube, hoping the developers watch this, the plans are going to come out. Like, it's going to happen. We want updates. All keeping this secret is going to happen is going to piss us off. It's going to make it way, way, way harder. It's going to make it way more contentious. We want to be good neighbors. We want to help out. We cannot help out if we're pushed out of the situation. What I told Chief Todd yesterday is, hey, we want to be a proactive accelerant in this road. We want it to show up as fast as possible. And in my brain, the equation that will make that happen is more money. More money equals faster road. And I don't know where it's coming from. I've been talking about this for a long time, right? But we will not have a seat at the table if this confidentiality clause goes through and it's pushed out and we're totally out of the room. So it's been, thank you, Michael, for keeping it a live issue for one more month. He was the only board member, I'm just telling us everyone, he's the only board member to vote no against the confidentiality clause. And it's my opinion that he's the only reason that it's alive for another month, that it would have gone through rubber stamped and we wouldn't have anything and it would have fallen into a black hole. They only got 2 emails last month about this. We gotta flood them. We gotta let them know this is not acceptable. That keeping the membership and the residents in the village out of the loop on the status of the road is not okay. I'm very emotional about this. I'm very animated, and like if this goes through and we get pushed out, like I'm going to be distraught. I'm going to be extremely upset. It's been an emotional week for a lot of us. I apologize. I apologize, Ashley, for being short and difficult, very much. But to everyone else, I've been hard to be around for a week, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But the confidentiality clause is top of the list. So
let me. Kendra,
sorry.
Kendra, I saw you had your hand up.
Who initiated the confidentiality clause? I'm sorry.
I don't know, but I would have to assume the builders.
Do you know
And
those
those builders are?
It's the developer, Summers West. And the board is having a meeting with the developer next week, on the 10th.
Where?
It's a private meeting between the board and the developer. Some of the developer people will be in person and others will be joining by Zoom in California. So I hope to ask a lot of pertinent questions there. But as the mayor shared last night, there is no written agreement between the county and the developers to build even the exit egress. And the mayor also confirmed that the trigger to build the permanent roadways tied into the magic number of the build out of the entire first phase, which is 278 homes. So the builder isn't even on the hook to do anything until 278 homes are done. And the mayor,
Another 10 or 15 years.
yep, and the mayor pointed out that they haven't even sold the first 5, let alone build the first 5, let alone sell the 278. So, if you're expecting an exit road right away, it's unlikely. And if you're expecting the permanent 2-lane road in less than 5 years, I would think that's unlikely. But as far as the confidentiality, I fought the board on this issue. There's concern posed by the developer and by some board members that if too many people get in the mix of this negotiation, it would add further delays. I don't understand that logic, and I don't understand what those fears are, and no one explained that to me, and I hope when we meet in person with the developer, they can shed some more light on that. Because all we've had are just a couple of really short emails back and forth, and then the agreement going back and forth. But the agreement going back and forth also doesn't set up any timing. It just sets up the parameters over rights and access, and is there going to be any compensation exchange to get access across these other partners?
In these conversations, does the WBA have their legal representation present, or is it just a bunch of, no offense, non-attorneys arguing with developers who presumably have attorneys present?
Highly paid attorneys.
Yeah.
There's a council hasn't been pulled in yet because there hasn't been any legalese touched on yet. It's still early in the negotiation talking. There's a couple of things missing, like a waiver of liability. So if someone gets hurt on the road they built, we need the association release from that liability. Stuff like that is being discussed, and we're used to that kind of standard boilerplate legal language on other contracts. We execute with other
The
partners.
waiver of liability was missing, but the confidentiality clause was included. The confidentiality clause was more important than the waiver of liability.
Well, no, but the waiver of liability would have come.
But there's other things that are missing, and there's typos in the document, so there needs to be some back and forth. But the confidentiality clause was put in as part of this paperwork, and we'll see if minds are changed at this next meeting.
Because my question as a HOA board, HOA member, there are actual legal reasons to keep information private from the homeowners, and this doesn't seem to me, I mean, exactly what you said. It's not proprietary, like, what, if the HOA moves forward with the confidentiality clause that goes against the only legal reasons that we are allowed to have information kept private for us, isn't that grounds for the HOA board to be sued by the homeowners?
That's an argument I made both in the public meeting, and it's an argument that I carried into the executive session, and it's not an argument I won. But maybe minds will be involved, but there is a fear, and I don't understand what the fear is, I don't understand the logic behind it. But there's a fear that if the confidentiality clause wasn't there, this whole project would slow down. And
It's been 20 years.
It's been 20 years. It's been 20 years. I know they have no part of that board.
And it's not gonna be good for at least 5, right? So
well, that's a permanent road, but just doing
no one's
setting up an
this,
egress road.
right? Like, I think.
No.
Bob, like.
So Bob has a
We're not gonna talk about that.
Are you on that tonight? Okay.
No, we're gonna talk about the general plan.
The general plan, yes.
But one thing I will say in defense of the board is that there is no member of the board who does not want to see this road built right away. And I think it's a fear that removing the confidentiality clause would add time. That aside, the board isn't proactively trying to slow down this project. They don't want to
Sure.
The board really wants this road done just as bad as everyone else in this room.
Michael,
I
the
mean, while that may
confidentiality
be
clause.
true, while that may be very true, isn't the board being held hostage?
Yes.
And
If the board could get their attorney on board with this, couldn't they put language in there that demanded, you own the land, that demanded a timeline and demanded a confidentiality clause be removed except for if there is, I don't know, something that has to be proprietary. But like, you own the land, we own the land.
Well,
we have leverage,
Why do
but
they have their?
that's it, because there's also these other parties in the process. And I don't know what other language the other partners are putting in and what their rationale is, because it's actually an agreement with 4 parties. There's another party in this too. But I'll know more if, as Matt knows, I'm as transparent as I can be on matters that I can be transparent.
At the last HOA meeting, this is to the WVA homeowners, and I'm sorry, I know we always only talk to WVA homeowners, but at the last meeting, it had to have been almost an hour of testimony about pickleball. And I just really believe this is slightly more important than pickleball, so if we could get half of the people in this room to show up to the next HOA meeting and talk about this more than pickleball, maybe they will listen to us, because it was just sort of a very small handful. I think it's important enough.
Just put on the radar and perhaps on the agenda for your next meeting is, I see a tsunami coming, and that's with skyrocketing insurance rates.
Yeah.
But like Limolani, their rates just went up 6-fold. So they are scrambling around trying to figure out how to do special assessments of thousands of dollars and boost monthly dues by hundreds. And we hear this from the other AOAOs in the community as the renewals come up. So that's a crisis and a panic, which is also going to impact budgets and like our wish list for the WA to do fire mitigation.
That comes back to confidentiality and secrecy. The insurance companies will want to know when the second road is showing up.
They don't. It's not a factor for them.
For the insurance companies?
No, it's all about national risk and how their portfolios are being hit by mainland losses.
No, I understand that, but they want to know about our safety profile. They want to know what's going on in the village, and they keep an eye on these things. And if they don't get insight and information on our improving safety profile, it is harming our standing with the companies.
I mean, we're.
There could be a reason why we get redlined. It's not gonna affect the raising premiums. I agree with you there.
But
Whether or not we get redlined will directly be related to our fires.
So my very desperate plea is for WVA homeowners to come to the next meeting and,
What is it?
It's on number 6 here, it's on August.
oh no, that's our Wildfire.
Oh,
I'm sorry, let me get it and I'll share it, but, write your name down so we can all give testimony and talk about how, important it is that we not be completely cut out of this conversation.
It's the reason I got thrown out of the meeting back in March. Like, this is it. It's secrecy, it's hiding, and it's not there. So.
And I got threatened to get kicked out.
Is that?
I got threatened to get kicked out of executive session.
Oh, you did?
I said, what would happen if I just leaked this document? What is my legal obligation to keep this?
And what was the answer?
The answer is we will boot you off the board.
Okay, but how will they do that?
But they can hold a vote and.
How about we call a special meeting and we start booting members of the board off as well?
Let's leave that for
Anyways, there's a lot of anger and energy. Let's move on to Bob. Let's move on to Bob.
July 23rd is the next WVA Board of Directors meeting in this room at 5:30 p.m. And with that, let's move on to the general plan strategy from Bob.
Okay. So I've been doing some of the legal research, and one of the things that's clear in the county code is that any project approvals for land development have to be consistent with the general plan. Now, that's not well defined as what consistent with means, but in this case, I think we can make a pretty clear argument that if the general plan has the second road in it with a completion date attached to it in the plan, that then becomes a condition that would have to be satisfied for any of the landowners along the road who want to have a project approved. So we now know that there are 3 private land holders along the line of the proposed road, in addition to the village. So those 3 landowners, one of them is Waikoloa Heights. They already have an approval that is subject to additional approvals. They have additional approvals waiting. They have to get their drainage plan approved, their street plan approved, and some other things approved. And I think we can hold up those approvals if the road is not done. And then the other landowners, private landowners, who are interested in having the road come into being because it allows them to develop their property, which right now they can't realistically do. They will have a strong stake in getting something approved for development on their property. So if the general plan says that this road has to exist by a date certain, like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever we can get into, that becomes a point of leverage with all of the other landowners who are involved in wanting to develop some land along that road. So right now the general plan speaks to having this road exist. So it's going to be in the next iteration of the plan, but it does not have a date attached to it. So what I'm arguing that we should do as an organization, as a group, as a community, is to show up at the next round of hearings on the general plan and insist that there be a completion date for this road in the plan, so that anybody who wants to develop anything related to that road has to make sure it gets done. And that will then provide some leverage for advancing this project, instead of waiting for 278 units to be built on the Waikoloa Heights, which is right now the only triggering event in a legal obligation for any of these landowners. So we want to go beyond that. So that's the objective. And the timeline is that the next iteration of the general plan is to be released on July 29th. It will then be open for public hearing again at the end of August and early September around the island. We want to make sure that we show up with enough voices to make it clear that this is important for us, that we want a date attached to that road in the plan. And then the planning department will finalize the plan and submit it to the planning commission. The planning commission has to approve it, and they can modify it, of course. So they will, hold some public events as well. That's scheduled to be next March. The planning commission will be doing its work, and then ultimately it goes to county council. So county council can also amend the plan, although they rarely do. They may make some tweaks to it, but normally it's an up or down vote. But if we don't get what we want, we can still be pressuring the county council at that point to add a date to the completion of this road. So there's 3 opportunities coming up here to get the general plan revised to include a completion date, which will then give us important legal leverage on the landowners to get this done. So that's that strategy.
Is that the July 23rd meeting?
No, the July 23rd meeting is the Waikoloa Village Association board meeting.
Bob, with the general plan and the county putting 1,000 workforce housing units in there, they're a developer too. Is putting it into the general plan gonna be double jeopardy for them, because we see how the developers are on this island. They start, they don't finish, they leave, they don't even start after going through years and years of planning. So, what's the onus of the county for the housing department? They've known about they've had that land for 40 years from Waikoloa Land Company to develop workforce housing, and they waited for Waikoloa Heights to come on board. And they're counting on other people to do that. Like that's what the county does.
So it's partly a question of when the county development is gonna happen. You know, is it gonna get its approvals before the plan gets revised?
Yes, it's all over, it's basically.
So if their approvals are already in hand, then it's not gonna affect them if the plan gets changed later. But it will affect all those landowners that don't have approvals yet.
Maybe that's why the general plan is the way it was finished in 2019 by the prior administration.
Anyway, that's the general plan.
Sorry.
And then there's another strategy in the works that we'll talk about another time.
Yeah.
So when we have a date, Bob, for that sort of, I know you said end of August, September-ish for that first round of community
Public hearings.
Yeah. We'll share it out with the group. I don't think there's a date yet.
Well, we will probably know that date by our next meeting in August.
Okay, perfect.
Because the plan itself is due out July 29th to the public, and that will come out with the hearing dates.
Okay. Great. So by our next meeting, we'll have dates for that, and we can plan to attend, plan strategy. I remember early in March when we first started meeting as a group, we talked about specific asks we could make of the WPA. If this public hearing is not in Waikoloa, we could ask them if they want to sponsor a bus and get people there, like they did for the new developments in, what was it? Not Coffee, where was it? Anyway, okay.
Well, maybe we can make sure that the planning department will hold a hearing.
They never remember.
Well,
they're aware of it.
That's true.
And WBA did send an official feedback to the general plan, and I think they would specifically ask for like 4 additional roads in and out of the village, and they added it to the general plan map, so that will come out finished.
But they didn't ask for dates, for completion dates.
Yeah. But the general plan is just a general guideline. It's not a legally binding, this is gonna be done by this date and this date.
It could be.
All right, next on the agenda
That's
is
the point.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob. The evacuation board game.
Oh, we're skipping this petition?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry, skip the petition. Sorry. The petition, the new petition.
So, somewhat related to this, now that we've been working on all of these efforts to get the state to include the road on the official state plan. And I think in previous sessions, he educated us on the importance of having the road on the state plan because it makes us eligible for federal money. So it's a kind of a sequence of events. So the road that we've been talking a lot about tonight doesn't appear on any county roadway. Consequently, doesn't appear on any state roadway, and consequently would never become eligible for federal funds if we got lucky and the road suddenly appeared in our lives. So
there's 2 things, Michael, I think. You know, what David is saying is that if we get it on the county plan, it increases our leverage for getting it onto the state transportation, which then makes it eligible for state and federal money, which is maybe a necessary step ultimately if the developers fall through on their plans. But the other piece of it, what can go in the general plan is either a date, or if we find resistance to having a specific date in there, what could be in the planning document is a statement saying that no development can occur in that corridor until the road exists. And so that puts the pressure on those landowners to get it done. So obviously the first preference is a date, but the second fallback position is that you don't put any more development there without the road. And that is a planning decision. Clear?
But watch out what you ask for, because that could also mean no development and no road. Because Waikoloa Heights can, or whoever can say, no, I'm out of here at 278.
I mean, get them out of here before then. Is the thing. Like, don't let them build 278, put 278 extra houses and hold everything to the fire now and let them know either you build a road or you don't get your house.
That's why we want to get the road into the federal plan, so that it's eligible for state and federal money.
And
If the developer ever walks away from it, if we have this road on the plan, then we could shift our attention back to the county and state, and ultimately with some federal help, to try and pay for a road that the developer never delivered. Okay, so that's one aspect. So what we're, I'll say, piloting now is we went to change.org, and there is a petition out there with the pithy title of Governor Green and Mayor Roth add Waikoloa second road to long range highway. So if I push the magic button here and the fifth person to endorse this, it will appear and be available to anybody who goes out to change.org to sign it in support of what we just discussed about getting this on the line. So let me I'm going to do that right now. And I know that they're going to make me verify my email address, so I will do that as we carry on the meeting. Be on the lookout for it. We will send out some communication and certainly post it on social media sites that we use to inform people that it's out there and give you the link. And my sincere thanks to Sabrina for really doing all the work. I'm just here to bask in the work. I appreciate it.
We're just trying to, especially with the mayor yesterday saying that it's not even an agreement he's brokered with the developers, it's a commitment.
Handshake, it is a literal handshake agreement.
We need to, this needs to be in the budget in other places, this needs to be recognized officially by state to be eligible for other areas of funding. I think we all know after 20 plus years, we can't rely on any handshake agreements. We can barely rely on a written agreement from 2004. So I will share the petition out with the email list, Nextdoor, Facebook, all the things. If you see it, sign it and share it, and we'll see what kind of traction we can get.
Anyone can sign it. You don't have to be a resident of Waikoloa. It takes 30 seconds. You can sign other things too. There's a whole website of petitions on there, but we're also, we're gonna probably have people sign it at the market this Saturday as well. So,
And now we'll move on to the evacuation board game. We're doing okay on time. We're trying to be
We're
very
catching up here.
respectful of everybody's time.
We're moving along. So one of the big things that we've identified as a gap in the safety profile of the village, and really credit to David for first identifying this, is a lack of an evacuation plan of any sort. There isn't one from the county, there's not one from the fire department. Sure, they have their own, first response, strategies, what they're gonna do, but there's no public plan for, hey, as a member of the village, what are we supposed to do and how are we supposed to go about it? So we've been talking about this for a long time, about just getting it done on our own, and David graciously did a ton of research and has started building together a little working group, and maybe we can have a minor update on that, but the board game specifically, the thing that I wanted to talk about is a couple weeks ago on Morning Edition, there was a professor at UC Davis who was doing a literal board game in Tamales, California. He went and set it up with the residents, and it was an actual board game with a map, and they played a game of evacuation, and they learned all sorts of stuff. And I emailed him, and we had a meeting with him also last Friday. And he and his research assistants were super enthusiastic. And the coolest thing was like all of it was validating. I assume it was validating to you, David, right? It was validating me that we were on the right track, right? They were talking about the same stuff that we're talking about, and they were super enthusiastic about it. I can't make any promises yet because it really comes down to him talking to his funding sources and them being convinced that he's not just trying to scam a free vacation to Hawaii, this whole research project. So we'll see where the whole thing lands, but I think that we made a fairly good, robust impression. And if indeed it does come about, the number one thing that he said that he wants is as many people participating as possible. So the minimum number of players would be 24. I just counted in the room. This is 24 people here right now, so we're good. And I told him we can totally get more than that if we have food, and I'm sure we can make a big community event at the school or something like that.
Can you explain a little bit more about the actual game itself and the thinking behind it?
Yeah, no, it's literally like you are playing as yourself in the map of his research assistants literally, they showed us the map of tamales, and it was like laid on top of it. It looked like the game of life kind of, or Monopoly or Chutes and Ladders or whatever. And the goal is to get out of the city, and you're playing with like 3 or 4 people, and there's like different variables with wind direction, the stuff that you bring. You go back a space if you take 2 cars. You go ahead a space if you have a plan, if you, whatever, there's all sorts of stuff. The coolest part about it, I thought, is that one person at the table plays the fire. And sort of like the dungeon master sort of role of the whole thing. And they said that that person is almost always like a firefighter, or maybe a member of the Firewise Committee, or maybe a member of civil defense, or CERT, or whatever. But he said that the real good thing about it is it's a way to get the community together and talking about this stuff. And it's a way to get them to interact with the professionals and start thinking about it. And then the people that came to the game can talk about it with their families and friends, and keeps on spreading out. It's just another entry point into thinking about evacuation, because it's going to happen. We're going to have to evacuate again at some point. We better be more ready for it than last time, I think. So that's where we're at.
But Talmadge, where are we with evacuation plans? Is that because in previous meetings you talked about like Waikoloa pursuing a phased approach for evacuations? Is there anything beyond a desktop exercise that would be a public plan?
Well, right now we're in discussion with I think it's the planning department, definitely the recovery folks, as far as talking about traffic study basically. The amount of people in here and the current roadways, how long will it take to get everybody out? So once we get that base information, then we can start actually planning.
So is that study funded or being worked on?
Yeah, I think we're going for some kind of grant funding.
Okay.
Do they take any suggestions about it, the evacuation plan? As far as the people on the ground, like the last evacuation, it was kind of bad, and you gotta have the police department as part of it, because from what I've seen, I live on Molina Street, and so when I seen the sky turn red to the right, I already had to go there and ready, and we were on our way out the door before I got the push alert. But going up Paniola right there, and I got to the golf course right here, the line was backed up with traffic. And so my thinking is, why is it a single lane right there? There's 2 lanes coming up. And so I just got in the lane like I'm gonna turn left and go to Waikoloa. And I just cruised right on up where you had people jammed in trying to get into the market, to cut through the market to come out the other way. And so I just went up to the corner. There was no police there. And I was in the other lane like I'm gonna make a left. And I just made a right in the outside lane and went on down the hill like that. So you gotta have, I would think you'd have to have a plan to have the police involved. And if emergency, I would think you would need 1 or 2 police at the intersection right here, Waikoloa Road and Paniola. And you need 2, I think, because nobody's coming down the road from the highway. That's gonna be blocked up there, because more than likely the fire's gonna come this way like last time. So you have 1 officer there standing just in case somebody's coming down that way. but you have the other officer waving people in both lanes. You gotta let the people know to take both lanes and make that right turn to go down the hill. Eventually, it goes into one lane. But you got the traffic backed up all the way to the apartments right there before the golf course. Because everybody's waiting for that one lane. They used to be in that one lane to make a turn. But then you need to have officers down at the Queen K Highway, and you need at least 2 minimum right there. You need one facing north to stop that traffic and keep the traffic moving coming out of the village, because more than likely, the majority of people are gonna make the left-hand turn to head down the corner. And then you need a couple more officers at Waikoloa Beach Drive to keep that traffic moving so it doesn't back up down the hill. So I would think that you need coordination with the police department to send somebody up there, because when I went down, I didn't see no police coming up the highway, coming up the road, nobody. And I'm thinking, the people don't know, they're sitting in that lane right there. Traffic is backed up trying to get through the market. It's backed up with people trying to get out of the market on the other end, you know, where the pizza place is. They're trying to get out. And I just went right on and was home free, and then got down to the highway and made a left and went on the corner. So
you obviously put a lot of thought into this. So, you know, we'll do the study. And there'll be opportunity for community outreach, you know, in the discussions.
There was a lot of cars coming up the road, because people was in the, you know, like over there in King's Market or whatever, and they're trying to get home. But I didn't see not one police car coming up.
I understand it. And that was like sudden onset happening, you know. So we work closely with the police. The biggest evacuation that we're working on is island-wide tsunami evacuation. So we work closely, we identify every checkpoint, roadblock around the whole island, over close to 200 sites that we have to staff with county, state, and so forth. Into that detail, we'll plan out something for Waikoloa as well.
And then the other thing is the access road right there. Who comes up there to unlock the gate?
So the people that have the keys are the association, CERT, fire department, and the police department.
So if the fire department is out, who's left?
So like I said, the CERT and the association have access to it.
Waikoloa Road now is wide enough that there could easily be 2 lanes of traffic going out if there was somebody making it happen. You know, if you just pump a bunch of cars on there, they're not gonna know to make 2 lanes, but if it was set up that way, you know, maybe you go in the breakdown lane, I mean, it's wide. You could probably even maybe have 3 lanes of traffic.
Tell Cindy Evans 2 weeks ago.
There's so much, it's a beautiful road now, it's wide open.
We'll look at every alternative.
And that might be a good thing for the game.
Sure. Good
To
conversation.
have 2 lanes and letting people know, 2 lanes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everybody's just in that one lane.
We hope to have this be a big conversation. The only thing that when you were talking about it, the only thing that I could think of that I've ever heard of that sounds sort of like a plan, an evacuation plan that is relevant to this is if you take the Hulu Road exit, you're going to be forced to turn right. If you take the Waikoloa Road as an exit, you're going to be forced to turn left at the bottom there so that the traffic doesn't cross in the middle. But that is new after the last evacuation. I don't remember who told us that, but that is.
Did we hear that at the City Evans Town Hall?
Maybe,
from the
yeah.
Assistant Fire Chief?
That sounds right.
That's
Pretty
right.
close to effectively worked that way last time.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Okay, last agenda item is an update from the mayor's talk story yesterday, and I put Bob on it, but I heard Matt spoke the most. So whomever would like to take this one?
We covered most of it.
Yeah,
I don't know what to
but-
add.
Okay. Sweet.
So, talk stories. Does anyone have anything they want to share or talk about before we make our asks for the upcoming events and everything?
I see it.
Yes, please.
I'm from Waimea, and next Thursday we're having our town meeting candidate forum. It's an awfully good opportunity for you to actually have face-to-face interaction with all mayoral candidates, state house candidates, Council 9, which is your district, and 1. So I would really urge you to come 5 to 8 o'clock, Kahilo Town Hall, which is across the street from the theater. We have all the candidates confirmed. It's speed dating, so you actually ask the questions and have the relationship with the candidates, not, you know, a panel that's kind of talks to five or eight subjects. So please come, 5 to 8 next Thursday. That's the 11th. Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
We'll be there.
Yeah, we will, and we promise, we're saving all our toughest questions for James and Miles.
Actually, I would add though that it's good to spread yourself out. Don't all sit together so that you spread around the room the conversation about your issues.
We'll be there a little early, probably like 4:30ish, and if we can all gather in front a little so we can kind of strategize so we don't all ask exactly the same question over and over again, but we can tackle different topics that are related to fire and the road, that'd be awesome.
But Matt, that's why you want to spread yourself out.
Exactly, yeah. Okay.
Anything else anybody wants to
Ask
ask?
her.
Okay, the one ask that I wrote down is that we have a table again at the community, Waikoloa Community Market on Saturday. And last month when we did it, it was really fantastic to just talk through the people who had questions for us, just wanted to support us. We got a lot of people to sign up for emergency alerts who were new to the village or new to the island and didn't know about it, that kind of thing. So we would love at least two volunteers per shift. We sort of broke it down. I wrote it down here with the 2 shifts. So if anyone wants to volunteer and just be there at the table, talk about the second road, feel brave, talk about what we're doing, that would be great. Kendra? Oh, not you, you're raising your hand. Oh, okay, both of you.
Well, this is the one thing I'm gonna plan on doing for both of us, not just on
Okay.
We'll both do.
I'll grab you after then about the times that would work. Anyone else?
We're gonna be off island, but.
It's hard, everyone's traveling this summer. Thank you, okay. Okay. And Patty already mentioned it, under upcoming events, we have the community market, the primary candidate speed dating, and then the election's coming up on August 10th. Yeah. That's all we had.
I just want to mention, I'm going to have a booth outside, or a table outside at KTA for voter registration sign up. I'm going to put it on next door. I got approval for 5 different dates for 2.5 hours. Yeah, so I will let you know.
Great.
And thank you to Talmadge again for coming. Yes, the second time I dragged you over here for community. Thank you for everything you guys do.
Dave Talmadge is awesome. Thank you so much for coming.
Sorry, one more right here.
Yeah, the South Carolina Traffic Safety Committee is meeting next week, Tuesday, up in Waimea at Tutu's house, 5 o'clock.
And that has been on Zoom in the past, right?
It is. I'm still trying to get the chair to take the responsibilities away from me. So. But the agenda, whatever that's going to look like, and the Zoom thing will be there. So.
Okay, awesome. Awesome, yeah, thank you to Talmadge, thank you to, yeah.
No, I just have some handouts if anybody wants. Just leave them with you guys.
Awesome, yeah, and don't run out, because I bet people have some
Yeah,
questions
we'll
for
be
you
here.
guys. We really appreciate you coming, thank you.
I appreciate everybody who works on this committee, all the work and intensity that you put into it. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a hard month, not gonna lie. It's been an emotionally straining month. And
Fire season.
And we couldn't do it without Aislinn taking care of the agenda and keeping us on track.
You can